Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the March Sherwood School Board meeting. And with that, if I'd ask you to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And as we start the meeting, since December, we've had some new guidelines in place. I'll just go over them really quick. And thankfully, some of these guidelines are going to drop off after this meeting. So we look forward to that. But as we start, just some general guidelines. Obviously, masks are currently required and expected to be worn properly. Everyone's sitting in an appropriate seat in the room. So appreciate that for the physical distancing. As we move forward, all attendees need to be respectful of everyone that is presenting by remaining quiet and observing appropriate behavior. No clapping, booing, hissing, cheering, pointing, or trying to communicate verbally with members of the board. Simply, the board needs to hear speakers and presentations, and the audience just can't become a part of the presentation or cause interruption. We want to hear all of you, and so please respect that. And if any of these guidelines are not adhered to during the meeting, we're going to have to call the meeting to recess, and attendees will be asked, will be dismissed, and we'll go to a live stream. We did great last meeting. It was amazing. It was a full house and everyone was absolutely perfect. So thank you all. You're already off to a great start. And with that, we'll move right into the meeting and the consent agenda, which is just items that are routine in nature and don't require board discussion. They're passed as a single vote by the board. So do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion, comments? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the consent agenda passes. And we will move right into reports, and I will turn the mic over to Superintendent Cordy.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, board members, and Ella, good evening. I just want to briefly talk about President's Day weekend and just the tragedy that we experienced in our community. And I want to express such gratitude for the team Sunday evening that started to put together plans in place to support for when school started again on Tuesday, for all of the staff who worked on Monday to make sure that those supports were in place, to the flight team members that joined us from other districts to be there for students and staff in the areas in those two schools that were designated for that. I have just such great appreciation for the supports and the love and the care that was extended. And it was so hard for so many staff members, and visiting and checking in with them on Tuesday and watching them care for the students just meant everything. So my heart is just full of appreciation and gratitude in such a tragic time. Thank you.
Ella, I'll move down to you. Go ahead and start us off.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Cordy. Thank you for having me tonight. This past month, I've had the privilege to be in the new auditorium at our school a couple times. And it's been great to have in-person audiences for our shows. We hosted our annual Bowman pageant, where 11 teams raised over $31,600 for Dornbecker Children's Hospital. And
we can clap for that. Sorry, Ella.
And we were honored to have Dr. Cordy there as one of our honored judges, who crowned Meg McLaughlin and Dola Papula as our 2022 Miss Bowmans. We also got to see the theater production of Puffs, which made me very excited for the spring season, where we get to have 2 plays in our new auditorium. Spring sports are now in full swing as we finished up the winter season with some really good wins all across the board. And then last night we had our freshman night, which was a really exciting intro to the class of 2026, which we will be welcoming in the fall. And then as we move into the final trimester, we look forward to student council elections, prom, and some brand new traditions that we were trying to get started. And on behalf of the student council and the SHS student body, we would like to thank the SSD staff for supporting us through this tough year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ella. Director Nyangaro.
I didn't really have much. I just wanted to give a shout out to our SRO, Officer Wolfer. If you're on Facebook and you follow the Sherwood Police Department page, you might have noticed a few posts that have come up featuring Officer Wolfer and his perspective on different issues facing our students in the schools. And some of those issues that I've seen covered were sexting, drugs, social media, and smartphone usage. So I find it very informative, very eye-opening. There's a lot of great information there. I think it's a great way to help the parents be more mindful of the dangers facing our children. So if you're not already following, well, if you're on Facebook and you're not already following the Sherwood Police Department page, I encourage you to do so.
Thank you. Director Adamson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to share some great news out of our Sherwood Band program last weekend with a lot of support from the middle school team. Thank you, Ms. Funderheide. Thank you, Mr. Bell, and the district leadership team for your support. The Sherwood Cadet Percussion Program, which is our middle school winter percussion program, hosted a show at Sherwood Middle School. I'm very pleased to report that the Sherwood Middle School students took first place. So did the Sherwood High School students, who later this spring will travel to Dayton, Ohio, to compete in world championships. So there's folks that kind of keep track of how kids are doing along the way. I'm very pleased to report that looking at the scores from last weekend, currently Sherwood High School is #1 in the country in their division, which is huge. We're very excited. I think the band teachers would tell me to take it with a grain of salt, but I'm just too excited. I have to share. With any luck, they'll do real well in Dayton, and just very proud of the kids, proud of the parents, and proud of this community for supporting them.
Thank you. Director Thorne.
Well, first of all, I would just like to take a minute to say that to the families involved in the tragedy over President's Day weekend, my heart goes out to you, and you are in my prayers. That is unfathomable, and I pray for you guys every day. Secondly, I would like to second what Director Nyangaro said about SRO and the awareness that he's bringing to the community for some really, really important issues. I think it's awesome. I love reading that information and sharing it with my kids, and somewhat related to that, I'm really proud of the district for starting this drug awareness campaign. And I just think that this is all great information that everybody needs, and it opens up a whole lot of conversations that are needed but are often forgotten to be had. So thank you.
Director Hawkins.
Yeah, I know we have a lot of great sports here in Sherwood. We're all really proud of our athletes and our band students and our choir students, but I had the opportunity last week to go attend one of the girls' playoff games. And unfortunately, I didn't get to see their second game where they lost, but we have such tremendous students and athletes, and it was so exciting to watch them play. I feel so lucky that we have such great coaches on our staff that lead all these students. And I just wanted to let them know how proud of them I was to watch them perform, and excited for all the spring sports, just like Ella mentioned. So that's all.
Awesome. And I think more than anything, I don't really have a report, but I think we should just have a round of applause for the band and for all of the really great things going on. We could use something positive, so round of applause. Thank you for sharing. So that SEA, Mr. Pace here, no SEA tonight. Ms. Fiken, OSEA? No. Okay. You gave one last time. I guess I'll let you off the hook. Okay. So what we'll do now is move on to public comment, and I appreciate you. Like I said, we kind of have a new process for a lot of things. So public comment this evening will be given in person, and then public comment has also been received electronically. As in the past, comments are to be appropriate in nature and not to exceed 3 minutes. And comments, what we'll do is we'll alternate between in-person and electronic comments. And what we'll do to just make sure we're not spending a lot of time kind of waiting is that we'll sort of have somebody on deck. So if we have an electronic comment, we'll have someone ready at the podium, so we're not waiting. Just as a reference, the comments are not a discussion or a debate with the board. It's just an opportunity for the board to listen. And like I said, we'll start with students first. We've got a couple students. We want the student voice to be heard, and then those with public comments related to the agenda item. And I think tonight all of the items are related to agenda items. So we'll go ahead and do that. And again, I appreciate your patience as we kind of work through our new process. It closes at 6:45. It does, yes. Electronic is 3 p.m. and in person is 6:45. So, yeah. Okay, so we will start. Is Isabel Angus? You are welcome to come to the podium, and the floor will be yours.
Hello, my name is Isabel and I am a freshman at Sherwood High School. And to me, Sherwood School District has always felt like a welcoming place, but it's felt like the opposite. I feel like it's becoming a little more judgmental. If you don't wear your mask correctly on your face, you are stared at and judged. And if not only judged by just classmates, but also by teachers and staff. We were finally given hope, March 12th, being able to see my friends and teachers' faces. The sad thing is, I've made new friends this year and I haven't been able to see their whole face. But now that hope is being jeopardized. There's a chance that all of you, the ones listening to this right now, could change that for me and the other 5,053 students in Sherwood School District. Based on your decision tonight, you could control the future of our district. Think about this. There's kindergartners who have never seen their classmates' faces, their teachers' faces. They've never eaten at a lunch table. They have yet to have a normal school year. Speaking from experience, I have personally been graded down for wearing my mask incorrectly and for drinking water and eating a snack. Teachers are more concerned about masks than the quality of education that they are giving us. I urge you to stick with your vote from August to allow us to go to mask optional once the state allows it on March 12th. Further, I urge you to focus on the teachers, bringing them back to a space of understanding for both masked and unmasked individuals and their freedom of choice. All we are asking for is the choice to smile, laugh, and actually see our friends without the constant pressure of being judged. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go to online, and then next up, I can head to the podium, Lindsay Broderick.
Mason Angus, Sherwood, Oregon. I think we shouldn't have to wear a mask anymore because it makes it hard to breathe and to hear what someone is saying. I also want to see my friends' faces. Please remove the mask mandate.
Thank you. Ms. Broderick, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I will address the matter of the formal complaint filed against Director Thorne. I've already emailed my arguments to the entire board, just the board, as they are the sole entity to decide the matter of this complaint. My comments are directed toward them, not Superintendent Cordy. I sincerely hope she's not used her influence to weigh in on this matter. I hope that by speaking in person, I might be able to add a personal and persuasive connection to my arguments. I find that former board member Mike Highland, the co-author of this complaint and antagonist to this board in town, has lost credibility and favor. His actions, along with Elaine Gordon and Steve Ramson, are despicable and distracting. Their intentions or to sideline vital progression of our top-notch district and drag us down to the mudslinging nature of status of other districts. Many families in this town have chose and even sacrificed to live here, that their children may have a peaceful and wholesome education. Complaints of this nature lower our status and prevent this board from actually accomplishing its educational tasks. There is no legal ground for this complaint. No mandates were in place at the time of the vote. But let's play the accusation out a little further. Let's say there was hypothetically a mandate in place and a motion was made to disregard it. First, mandates are not law because they're not voted on. You have sworn to uphold the Constitution and its laws. Second, and maybe more on a personal to this board, is how it all played out. Directors Hecker and Adamson were the standing board members with knowledge and experience. The incoming directors were just getting acquainted with their responsibilities. Director Adamson proposed the motion in question. If, and that's a big if a no vote on this motion was to have such extreme consequences as a Class C misdemeanor, fines, and jail time, why would such a motion be presented? Is a proposal of such a motion not incriminating? Why would Director Adamson seek to incarcerate her fellow board members? I'm positive this was not her intention, but by nature of the complaint, this is the logical conclusion. If you vote to approve an investigation of Director Thorne, I can only assume this was your intention, and there will be action taken against you. All evidence, including any obstruction, intentional or not, will be considered. As stated in my email, I know for a surety that all more members of this board love Sherwood and have its best interests at heart. I meant that. I believe that disagreement and debate lead to the best outcomes. I am grateful for all of your contributions. There are much more pressing matters to be addressed that directly involve our children that I would like to see this board focus on. For example, many families have pulled their children from this top-notch district due to pornography entering our
That's
curriculum.
time.
Thank you. No, we won't finish reading, but you can submit them, they can be on the public record. Thank you. Okay, and then we'll go to an online or electronic comment, and then Michelle, is it Anger? You want to go ahead and head to the podium?
Shane, Sherwood, Oregon. It is hard to imagine a more stupid or more dangerous way of making decisions than by putting those decisions in the hands of people who pay no price for being wrong. Thomas Sowell. Thomas Sowell was born in 1930 and is still alive to this day. I sometimes wonder how he would respond if he was asked about the current situation facing the world. His quote would lead me to believe he would be disappointed. We've removed decision-making authority from those that outcomes matters to the most. Many of us have faced hard decisions over the last 2 years, mostly based on little to no information or facts. Some decisions we likely regret, others we would not change given the chance. I suspect the school board is no different. If given the opportunity to honestly reflect on the decisions they have made over the last 2 years, how many would they change? The challenge facing the world today is that knowledge and facts have been politicized to the point that we are unable to hear each other's point of view. Rather, each side feels they have the right information to justify their point of view, and the other side feels the same. There is no middle ground, logic, or reason. Further, the middle ground, when it does exist, is composed of those unwilling or unable to speak up for fear of retaliation by radical right or left. So instead, we only hear from the two extreme sides, rather than the silent majority in the middle. Americans have historically trusted the media, government, elected and unelected officials, school boards, etc., to do the right thing. We assume that they have more information than us, and their collective view will point us in the right direction. History also teaches us that power corrupts and poor decision-making can usually be traced back by following the money. History will eventually rule on COVID. Did we do the right thing or the wrong thing? Only history will know for sure. But I suspect if we follow the money, we will already know the answer. Going back to the quote by Thomas, I encourage us to think about who will pay the price for being wrong. From what I can see, the media, government, elected officials, and school boards do not pay the price for being wrong. Rather, in this case, specifically the decisions around how our schools respond to COVID, has a direct price to be paid by our children and parents. If the school board is right or wrong, the only way they will be impacted is by not getting reelected. Our children, on the other hand, will be with their parents for the rest of their collective lives. There is no redo or no election. They are together for their life. It is with that commitment to each other that they should be allowed to make the decision that is right for them. We need to put decision-making authority back into the hands of the people who pay the biggest price for a wrong decision. I strongly urge the board to stay with their August decision to lift the mask mandate in alignment with state guidelines. Additionally, if in the future, when the Sherwood School Board is considering decisions,
That's time.
Thank you. Ms. Anger, the podium is yours.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Okay, I'm way out of my comfort zone here, so, but I thought it was super important to do it in person. It's mostly in regard to the public complaint made by Steve Remsen, Elaine Gordon, and Mike Highland against Krista Thorne. It seems to be a witch hunt to me. I don't know. I did not know Krista before. We weren't friends. I don't know her kids. I don't know her husband. But what I do know is that I voted for her based on her convictions and heartfelt beliefs about COVID protocols and masking of children. If she had voted against her beliefs in that August meeting, she would basically have been lying to all of us that voted for her because of her thoughts and her beliefs. We voted for Krista to be our voice of reason, and to my knowledge, she's done that. Why even have voting if when you vote different from the group, you get attacked by those who you disagree with? Each of you should have the right to follow your hearts, and please do the right thing and stop this attack on the differing of opinions. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go to online. And then next up at the podium will be Jeff Roberts.
Mike Jones, Sherwood, Oregon. With regards to the formal complaint, it should be ignored, and those individuals, former board member Mike Highland, Steve Jensen, and Elaine Gordon have attempted to use the formal complaint process as a way to railroad Director Krista to vindictive reasoning I cannot understand. Their logic makes zero sense. Why would Director Hecker allow a motion for a vote in which a nay vote would be in violation of their oath of office? It's not, and there's nothing wrong with calling for the motion. Over the past 2 years, the board has done a wonderful job of complying, representing state, Salem ODE, and OHA. When will the board start representing parents and complying with what the parents have to say? Our voices are being ignored both by the school board and the school administration. When can the parents and board have discussion on desired curriculum and reading material that is desired reading for classes? Several weeks ago, the Sherwood resource officer was talking about sexting and how some of the behavior that we are seeing in schools could be considered child pornography, not only via cell phones, but in the reading curriculum as well. From the book, I Will Give You the Sun, page 47. It was the first time any guy had ever seen me without a bra or anything, and my cheeks flamed. He smiled, his pupils were big and black, his eyes so dark as he lowered me onto my back in the sand and slowly pushed the fabric of my top against the sides. This time I let him look at me. I let my cheeks flame. I could hear his breathing in my own body. He started to kiss my breasts. I wasn't sure I liked it. Then his mouth was on mine so hard I could barely breathe. That's when his eyes got unseeing, his hands everywhere at once. That's when he started telling me I could say no, and that's when I didn't. Then his whole body was pressing into the hot sand, burying me in it. I kept thinking, it's okay, I can handle this, I can, it's okay, okay, but it wasn't, and I couldn't. This is a sex scene between a 14-year-old and a guy nearly 4 years older. This is statutory rape in Oregon, from a book recommended for 9th graders. And we wonder why the SRO has to post messages regarding sexting and pornography. Sorry, it's already in our schools. No thanks to former school boards that did not do their job. Sue and Jessica, you are partially to blame for this, along with the superintendent. The book was added to the curriculum on your watch.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts. The podium is yours.
Thank you. Good evening. Have an issue with curriculum. I think curriculum should unite, empower. It should be something that we trust the school board and the school administrators to do. It shouldn't be hidden or decided on by a few. So I was shocked when my third grade health unit, it started out when I got an email to opt out and I asked for the curriculum to be emailed to me. I was emailed the website, which has no curriculum. I was then, when I brought that up, they said, you'll need to come into the school offices during school hours and you can read it then. So I was able to take off lunch and drive home. There's a lot of people who can't, which is not very equitable. And when I walked in, they said, here it is, you cannot leave, you cannot take photocopies, photos, video, it must stay here. As you can imagine, my antenna went up and I thought, why? 90% of it is fantastic. I got to a section 24 that's entitled Identity. I'd like to read the objective for this section: to define gender expression, identity, and sexual orientation, and how to show tolerance and respect for individual differences. So the lens of sexual identity for 8 and 9-year-olds is not based, and tolerance is not based on what is your color, religion, economic status, political, what's the size and shape, ethnicity. Those are the things that we should talk about in tolerance and be balanced. I'd like to read another section. Well, first off, there's a terrible section about stereotypes from like 1950s, which I would be a woman in that based on my, I like theater. And you're shaking your head too, and so did I. The section asks, what does it mean to be gay, lesbian, or bisexual? This refers to someone's sexual orientation, which is a feeling of romantic attraction toward another person. I would ask you, what's missing in those three? Or in that question? Heterosexual, which is not mentioned at all during the entire unit. 96% of us are here because we're heterosexual, the human race. The performance standard that they are supposed to be judged by. Number one, did the students explain the difference between biological sex and gender expression? Did the students define sexual orientation? Finally, which is a good one, did students identify ways to show tolerance? Again, that's one lens. Sexual orientation for third graders. We need members of the school board to be on the comprehensive health committee. We do not need teaching ideology before. This section was put ahead of anatomy.
That's time.
Madam Chair,
I'd like to move on.
Yeah, you can go ahead and leave those with Ms. Andrade and she'll pass those out. Thank you. We're going to go ahead to the electronic comment, and then next up in person is Steve Robertson, please.
Stacy Robertson, Sherwood. I'd like to speak out against what I think is a frivolous and ridiculous public complaint against Director Thorne. We all know that Director Thorne campaigned specifically against mask mandates in our schools, and she was elected to this board by Sherwood voters. She has a large amount of support in this community. That's how she won the position. So why would anyone be surprised that she voted against mask mandates? If voting against masking was in any way a potential violation of a director's oath of office, why would the chair bring this to a vote? Should the board chair be subject to a complaint for setting up a vote which could put another board member in violation of her oath? Punishable up to 30 days in jail, according to this complaint. The complaint actually acknowledges it is motivated by other recent events, so it's really nothing but a vindictive means of punishment. This is a joke. And it's really disappointing to know that one of the complainants was a previous board member who should know better. Let's dial down the divisiveness and get to work on real issues for Sherwood. The masks are going away. Let's move on. Director Thorne was right about cloth masks and having no meaningful effect at stopping the spread of COVID-19. Masks did cause harm to our kids, especially our youngest, who most need to see human faces. These are the facts. This complaint needs to be dismissed outright. Do not waste time and energy on what is obviously a vengeful grievance. I urge you to vote no on any further investigation. Allowing this to move forward for a third-party investigation would certainly be setting a horrible precedent. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Robertson, the podium is yours.
I have to follow my wife. Okay. Good evening. I believe the complaint against Director Thorne is nothing more than a calculated political smear against a caring and decent board member. I think it is a disgrace that we even have to have this on the agenda as an issue. But my understanding is that that's our policy. So I urge the board to quickly dismiss the complaint with a unanimous vote of no. It would be extremely divisive and reckless for any member to vote to send this to a third party for investigation. As we all know, Director Thorne campaigned specifically against mandates, so it should have been no surprise to anybody that she voted no. And there is a large constituency of parents who voted for her that appreciate her, what it turned out to be a protest vote of no. Also, I was just reminded by somebody that the board voted on August 4th, and the mandate didn't even happen until August 11th. So it's just totally ridiculous. And I'd ask the board to consider this. If there's any legitimacy to this complaint at all, why did the board even put the mask mandate up for public vote? Based on the logic of this complaint, didn't the whole board violate public oath of office by even putting it up for vote? To those who think this complaint was a valid way to score cheap political points, how would you like to see complaints filed against any other board member who might be on your correct side, according to you, of some other contentious political issue? Because I guess the board would have to put the complaint on the agenda, no matter how frivolous, to be publicly debated on and voted on. Is that what we all want? No. So let's move on and do the right thing, quickly dismiss this bogus complaint and get on with other issues. And then just as a PS, Director Thorne turned out to be right on the masking issue, as everybody should know by now. Cloth masks make virtually no meaningful difference in stopping the spread of COVID. But where it does make a meaningful difference was in the harm that is done to the social and interpersonal developmental trajectory of all of our young children. Shame on the government overlords in Salem for doing this to our kids for so long. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe the rest of our comments are electronic.
Vince Haybeck, Sherwood. With the retraction of the state mask mandate, it's time for the board to eliminate the related social distancing rules in the district. The distancing rules, as stated by the CDC, are not based on studies of efficacy, but merely suggestions. As pointed out in the February board meeting, the distancing rules led to actions such as grade school children eating on the floor due to space considerations. Related to the distancing rules, it's prohibition and use of locker rooms at the middle school. Children in PE and sports fitness classes conduct physical activity and are restricted from subsequent usage of locker and shower facilities. The students then attend the rest of the day's classes in the same clothing without the opportunity to conduct hygiene activities. This seems especially relevant considering the current health classes instructing students in proper hygiene. Continuing this policy has no basis in student safety and is simply another obstacle to learning for those students who would choose to make use of available facilities.
Chris Kotsky, Sherwood. I find it comical that last meeting someone said he had never been so disappointed in Sherwood for the protest led by students voicing their beliefs against one of the biggest scams of our lifetime. You know, like forcing kids in masks for safety, and really it's for COVID cash. I guess the left leaning in this town really would have preferred us to burn buildings and destroy the city like their allies in Portland did. One mom claimed windows were rattled and doors were shook while kids were terrified. When you watch the video, it's quite the opposite. The kids were cheering them on from the inside, laughing and wishing they would have joined. Some people really are so privileged, drunk on a narcissist lifestyle, just living in an echo chamber. Drop the complaint against Krista. If holding a sign and standing for the principles that got her elected is wrong, I don't understand what right is. Thank you, Krista, for walking the walk with us that day. I salute your bravery. If any action needs a formal complaint, look no further than SSD leaders. How are their actions of bullying and physically stopping kids from entering a public school not under scrutiny? Then suspending kids for protesting peacefully where no one was harmed or injured. Answers, anyone? Don't worry, formal complaints are going to fly soon enough. Don't think any of us have forgot about the 2.5 years of constitutional violations on a state and federal level this leadership has forced us to endure. The silent majority is silent no more. Christopher.
Mike Highland, Sherwood, Oregon. I'm writing to express my thanks to the Sherwood School District for all the hard work in implementing all the safety procedures needed during the COVID pandemic. Also for making all the adjustments that have been necessary based on current conditions. Your work has kept our community safe. We have a lot to be proud of regarding our response in Oregon. We're among the top 5 states for lowest case rate and lowest death rate. Our death rate is around half that of 27 other states. If we had the same death rate as states like Florida and Texas, or 25 other states, we would have had an additional 5,000 Oregonians dead today. This success occurred because we acted early, took the threat seriously, created a strong response, and came together as a community to follow it. At the start of the school year, there was a school board vote on whether we should follow these mandates, specifically the mask mandate. One director voted no. Director Thorne voted to weaken our response and put the health and possible lives of our families, students, and staff at risk. This vote would have left us vulnerable during the last 2 waves of this pandemic. This vote was a violation of her oath to uphold the law. This vote was a violation of her financial responsibility as a board member. It would have meant the loss of federal funds and state fines, which could have led to budget cuts. I write in support of the complaint made against Director Thorne and ask that an investigation be made into whether this constitutes a violation of her oath of office.
Kane Johnson, Sherwood. I would like to see a third-party review the conduct of Director Thorne as requested in action item C. Even if I have some of the same views on masks as Director Thorne, I feel she may have violated her oath as put forth in the complaint. After warnings from OSBA, along with the district legal counsel, Director Thorne votes shows that her political views are more important than her fiduciary duty to our students. The fact that she continued this action at the protest shows this as well. As she stated in the last board meeting, she wanted to support her child's decision upon him receiving a text. My son received the same text. I sat him down to explain how this protest is not the best way to express his concern. I then supported my kid by assisting him in writing our legislature. Director Thorne, not only as a parent, but as a board member, should be the example this community needs. Unfortunately, Director Thorne's recent actions are concerning. I would appreciate and feel better with a third-party investigation.
Jeff and Kristen Carr, Sherwood. We wanted to express our concern over the formal complaint that was filed against Director Thorne for her vote against the motion that Sherwood School District follow the mask mandate back on August 4th, 2022. The fact that this masking issue was brought to a vote indicates that any board member should be able to vote either for or against the issue. With her vote that day, Krista spoke for our family and many others in our community. If this type of complaint is given legitimacy, then our voice as community members is at risk of becoming silenced. That is unacceptable. Please, we implore you not to waste any more time, money, or resources on a complaint that simply stems from disagreeing with the way a board member voted. With regard to the Carr family. Lauren Holgren, Sherwood. Just a couple of quick notes. Please lift the physical distancing requirement. It is not required by RSSL. It is only a suggestion. Other larger school districts are suggesting 3 feet of physical distancing, but are not requiring it. The RSSL guidance, not rule, said to strive for 3 feet of distance. This is not a requirement, and there is no need for the Sherwood School District to add extra rules. Complaint against Krista Thorne. Director Thorne has every right to vote the way she sees it. Every director on the board is allowed to vote the way they see fit without feeling threatened. That is the purpose of voting. The complaint against her is completely political and vindictive. It was created by people with an agenda and not people who are thinking about the school community as a whole. It is a waste of money and resources to start an investigation into a lawful vote. Director Adamson brought the item up for voting in that meeting, and there was not a requirement that any of the directors ever vote in a certain way. This complaint needs to be dropped. That concludes public comment.
Thank you, appreciate it. And we will move on to information and discussion and a COVID update from Ms. Andrade when you are ready. Thank you.
Madam Chair, as Ms. Andrade prepares to present, I just have a quick question for clarification. Are there any planned votes tonight on a mask mandate? Has that issue already been resolved?
It's already been resolved. There is definitely no vote on changing anything that we did August 4th.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good evening, and thank you for your patience as I did logistics before coming up to present. So, stand by. We are having our traditional technology glitch. Thank you. Okay. Effective this Saturday, March 12th, our district, like others across the state, will be implementing significant changes in our current COVID protocols. This evening, I will be providing you with updates based on the state level announcements and guidance that were released last week. In this overview, I will be discussing the most significant changes, including the lifting of the current mask mandate for K-12 schools, the pausing of contact tracing and what that means for quarantine and isolation, and what testing options we will utilize going forward. I will also review ongoing mitigation strategies that our district will continue to utilize in our efforts to prevent the spread of COVID-19 in our schools. So back in August, you as a board took action in a proactive vote that once the state K-12 mask mandate was lifted, our district would adopt a mask optional status, allowing families and staff to make individual decisions about their use of masks and face coverings. Since that time, our district has complied with the state requirements and monitored changes in guidance closely. Earlier this calendar year, the state initially announced that the mask mandate for schools would be lifted on March 31st. And this original date was intended to provide schools with ample time to prepare for the transition to mask optional protocols. Following strong feedback from schools to align the lifting of school mask mandates with the lifting of the general population indoor mask mandate, the state updated the date of the mandate's end to March 19th. 4 days later, the date was again revised by Governor Kate Brown with the new effective date of March 12th in alignment with our neighboring states of California and Washington. The lifting of the K-12 school mandate means that the decisions around mask use in schools returns to local control. With your August 4th vote to adopt a mask optional status, having already been in place, our district team was able to immediately begin working on our transition plans in preparation for the quickly approaching March 12th date. Once in effect, our mask optional status applies district-wide. This includes all indoor and outdoor settings, including our school buses, and also applies universally to any individuals in our campuses and facilities. While many individuals in our school district may choose to cease their use of masks moving forward, we also recognize that there will be those who may continue to choose the use of masks. And our district will continue to provide PPE, such as disposable masks, to those individuals as requested. It is worth noting that the Centers for Disease Control, CDC, has also updated their mask recommendations and have released those recommendations under a new website titled COVID-19 Community Levels. On this website, individuals can check the case rate levels in their local area by county and receive specific recommendations based on that level. While our county was at medium risk at the time that this slide deck was created and published with the agenda, as of this morning, Washington County is now identified as low risk level, which is the color green on the CDC maps. This website is a great resource for families and staff members who want up-to-date recommendations based on case rates as they make their informed decisions about mask use in the coming weeks. It's also worth noting that this resource is now linked on our own district's COVID-19 information website. While the CDC does continue to recommend universal masking for K-12 schools during times of high risk levels, the most recent guidance does clarify that individual choice is appropriate at all levels based on individual risk assessment. In addition to the lifting of the K-12 mask mandate,
Last week, the Oregon Department of Education released the newest version of the Ready Schools Safe Learners Resiliency Framework, with all changes also taking effect on March 12th in alignment with the lifting of the mask mandate. The most significant change in this guidance, beyond the mask mandate lift, is the pausing of all contact tracing and quarantining of close contacts. The terms quarantine and isolation are sometimes used interchangeably in the public or in the media. So as a reminder from our previous COVID update last fall, the term quarantine specifically applies to individuals identified as close contacts or those that have been exposed to a contagious disease and are therefore at risk of becoming infectious. The quarantine is a period of separation while they're to allow for the monitoring of symptoms to prevent any further spread. In contrast, the term isolation is used to reference individuals who have a contagious disease, as evidenced through the presentation of a positive test result, symptoms, or both. With isolation, the period of separation occurs until the sick individual is no longer contagious. While contact tracing, which is the process we use to identify close contacts, and the quarantine for those close contacts will be paused effective this Saturday, we are still required by state communicable disease requirements to isolate individuals who have a positive COVID test result, or if remaining untested, who present with primary symptoms of COVID-19. This exclusion from school falls under OAR 333-019-0010, and it aligns with long-standing school requirements of excluding individuals, not just for COVID, but for a number of identified contagious diseases. Isolation is not related to vaccine status, meaning that all ill individuals are excluded from school or work, whether they have a vaccination or not. So just to reiterate, effective this Saturday, our district will no longer be identifying close contacts or requiring students or staff exposed to a positive case to undergo quarantine. And this is also true regardless of vaccination status. For anyone in our schools that was placed in quarantine during this current week, while the guidance remains in effect, the period of quarantine will automatically end at midnight this Friday. However, we do know that we continue to have cases in our schools and may continue to for some time. And so we want to continue to provide transparency to families and staff of potential exposures in our schools and facilities. For this reason, effective Saturday, we will be re-implementing case notification emails district-wide. This will include at the classroom level, as well as cohort levels where applicable, including our athletic teams. And just to note, I did meet today with office staff from all of our schools. And so everybody's kind of been trained to get ready for this communication change to come back. When there is an exposure on one of our school buses, families will be notified via the Ride 360 app. And in a communication going out later this week, we will remind families how to sign up for that app to receive those notifications. Notifications at these levels will include information about primary and non-primary symptoms so that families and staff members can monitor for those symptoms following a potential exposure. We will also resume sending school-wide or building-wide notifications as we have done in the past. I also wanted to note that the pause in contact tracing and quarantine does apply to all of our school settings and activities, including those listed here. During the surge that occurred in January, there were multiple changes to isolation rules and timelines. And we recognize that these frequent changes were very confusing to families and staff members. Since symptomatic individuals or those with a positive test will still be required to isolate, I wanted to take this opportunity to clarify exactly what these current recommendations are, which will remain in place ongoing. Isolation is currently and will continue to be for a 5-day period. This is counted with day 0 being the first day of symptoms or the date of the positive test result, with day 1 of the 5-day count being the following full day. Because day 1 starts with the first full day, it does not matter what time of day on day 0 that symptoms started or that the test was taken. Following 5 full days, the individual may return to school or work starting on day 6 if they have been fever-free for 24 hours without the use of fever-reducing medication and have had other overall symptom improvement for other symptoms. Continuing our current response process, our schools will report student cases to our health services department. And that department will make contact with families to provide resources and information, as well as confirm the date that the student can come back to campus. Staff members will continue to self-report their own cases or symptoms, and health services will also work with them directly to do that same date verification of when they can return to work. As a resource to our families and staff members, our district will continue to provide diagnostic testing on site to students or staff members who become symptomatic while at school or work. Participation in diagnostic testing is completely optional. Additionally, our district can assist with testing following a potential exposure for those individuals at high risk of severe COVID-19, such as our medically fragile students or staff members. We may also be directed at any point from local public health to provide exposure testing in situations such as an outbreak, for example. Additionally, the state continues to offer its weekly screening test for unvaccinated students and staff members. This testing involves the distribution of at-home testing supplies and requires sign up in advance.
Miss Andrick, just to clarify about the first bullet, it's completely optional, meaning if you're under the age of 15, your parents need to be okay with you receiving testing. If you're over the age of 15, you're allowed to make that decision on your own. Is that correct?
I would have to confirm that. I don't have that information at hand.
Okay, thank you. I apologize for not asking you that in advance.
Okay. All right. Under our diagnostic testing program, individuals, there we go. So under our diagnostic testing program, individuals who receive a negative COVID test, they'll still be required to exclude from school because being symptomatic is a prerequisite for getting one of those tests. However, if an individual receives a negative COVID test result, therefore clearing them from being COVID positive, they can return to school under symptom-specific guidance rather than the required 5 full days. So this starts a little confusing, so I'm going to give you an example. So let's say we have a student on a Monday morning, comes into the school office with 101.5 degree fever. We can offer that student diagnostic testing as the parents on their way to come pick them up. The test result comes back negative, and therefore the diagnostic test has ruled out COVID. The student is still ill and therefore would still need to go home. However, let's say Monday evening, that fever breaks and they remain fever-free throughout Tuesday, therefore 24 hours. That means because there is a negative test result in place and the fever has cleared for 24 hours, they would be able to come back Wednesday rather than a 5-day COVID isolation. It's a bit tricky, so I want to stop there in case there's any questions for clarification.
I do have a question. Besides a fever, what other symptoms would qualify for a student to have to stay home?
So primary symptoms of COVID include fever over 101.4, cough, difficulty breathing or shortness of breath, chills, and new loss of taste or smell, and a cough, if I didn't say that one already. So those are the ones that are considered the primary symptoms.
I'm just thinking, I know you don't make all these rules, but I'm just thinking of little kids that like really can hang on to a cough for an extended period of time. And obviously a parent would not want their child to be home for days on end with a cough if they tested negative.
Yeah, and so that's when we get into symptom-specific guidance, which is actually linked in the slide deck, I believe. So there's a separate set of guidance for just general symptoms that are based on the specific symptoms. So at that point, the school would need to refer to whatever the rules are specific to cough, not specific to COVID, if that makes sense. And schools have been doing that work with families since well before the pandemic. It's that conversation you have of my kid's still sick. Can I send them? Can I not?
No, I appreciate the clarification. I just wanted to make sure every time someone had a cold, they weren't feeling like their kid was going to get yanked out of school. Because I know this year, a lot of parents would say, oh, my kid said they had a sore throat. And I'm like, don't say that, and
Yeah.
I don't want kids to feel like they have to hide
Yeah.
that they don't feel well, but I also don't want them to fear that they're going to get sent home for every little symptom.
Absolutely. And that's why, we're still offering testing, and we still really recommend testing even at home test. An at-home negative test, you can take a photo and verify that negative test, and that works as well. So really, we're still promoting testing as a protocol that's really helpful in ruling out COVID. It's of course optional, but taking that viral test really makes a difference in how we are required by the state to respond to symptoms of illness. Any other questions on that? I know this one's a little tricky.
Yeah, no, this makes a lot of sense, and I really appreciate the thoroughness with which you're going through this. Will that link to symptom-specific guidance be available on our COVID page so that parents, if they are wondering about that, they'll be able to find that? Is that?
I will have
something
it available on our website by 10 a.m. tomorrow.
You're amazing. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for that recommendation. And just a final note on testing, if you've been reading our communications throughout this calendar year, we had put in place a modified quarantine back in December. That was actually really helpful over winter break for a lot of our athletes to come back faster from quarantine. We had been doing all this work and training with our school staff to do test to stay and implement that full program. Without quarantine being a thing anymore, neither of those programs apply. And so that's why you kind of heard us not talk about it anymore. Those basically dropped off once, quarantine was no longer a thing. So just in case there's any curiosity around that, that's why those programs are no longer in place. They're no longer necessary. All right, moving on. So with these changes to mask and quarantine requirements, while these changes, are a big step back towards normality for our students and staff, we do still have positive cases of COVID in our schools, and we will continue to use additional mitigation strategies within the resiliency framework to help protect the health and safety of our students and staff in our schools. One of these strategies is physical distancing. Under the updated guidance, schools are advised to continue to use the 3 feet of physical distancing to the extent possible. So the ongoing use of physical distancing will be encouraged wherever possible, while providing common sense flexibility to our school teams, and of course, prioritizing student opportunities for hands-on learning, assemblies, labs, and other such activities. Yesterday, our school administrators met in their level teams to discuss how physical distancing will be applied practically at their schools. And they will be working with their staff in the coming days on how best to apply this mitigation strategy throughout the school day. And this may look different across levels. So for example, and it also might be combined with other strategies. So for example, at our elementary schools, they will continue to aim for that 3 feet of distance during lunches. And they will also maintain classroom cohorts, which will help if there's an exposure, because then we're only having to do that classroom level email notification, whether it was lunch or in the actual classroom itself. So that's just kind of one example of how that might get applied throughout the school day.
Can I ask a question? Although I know we don't really know what it's going to look like each of the buildings, but like with regards to this, and we're talking about it's recommended, but it's not required. Is that going to alleviate the need for students per se to have to eat on the floor or spread out to the extent where they all can't sit at tables? Is that what our district intends to do?
And this is where we say, those common sense flexibility. So we're going to each school, I can't speak to each school's stuff, but we're going to need to really dive in and review, like, what does this mean now that we have a little flexibility with this particular strategy? We want to do everything we can to prevent spread, but we need to be having those common sense conversations.
Common sense is just it's pretty subjective,
Yeah.
So I'm curious what that's going to look like.
Mhm.
And I know people are asking us, what is that going to look like?
Yeah. And I do know schools, schools are, we got this guidance a week ago. Schools are powering through it this week. And so I know schools are going to be communicating out some of what this looks like at an individual school or an individual level.
Okay.
I just can't speak to a particular
Will
school.
we receive an update on that?
Yes, I can make sure that the board receives all the schools' notifications that go out this week.
Thank you.
Any other questions before I move on? Okay. So, there's other strategies we've been using. They're not quite as, we don't talk about them as much, but they are constantly ongoing. And one of those is our ventilation and airflow.
It's an area of mitigation that's been tended to throughout the pandemic, and our amazing facilities and maintenance team has just continued to be on top of this from the get-go. So there's several measures within this category, and that includes maximizing the circulation of outside air through open dampers, as well as open windows or doors where it is safe to do so. It also ensures including that our ventilation systems are working properly and effectively, and this involves ongoing inspection, maintenance, and cleaning of all of those systems. We also have upgraded the models of our air filters that are used in our building systems and have added portable air filtration systems in high traffic areas, including our isolation rooms. And finally, our schools will continue to promote proper hand and respiratory hygiene, and cleaning and disinfection of high traffic or common areas will remain a focus district-wide. And here's just a few examples of what that looks like. And with that, I will open it up to any further discussion.
At the last meeting, there were some concerns with students eating lunch on the floor. Where are we with that? Are we still going to have?
So I just mentioned to Director Hawkins that I can't speak to a particular school, so I'm not sure that our staff are working kind of through the nuances of how to apply physical distancing this week. And so they'll be updating families as they kind of have those nuanced per school or per level decisions made.
Thank you.
I just want to say, I mean, I'm so glad we're finally having this kind of discussion, not all the other ones that we've been having, and really want to thank you and the entire team at the district for navigating this absolute nightmare of rules and regulations and changes that, you know, are so tough and things that we've had to go through in this pandemic. I really appreciate it. It has been an incredible challenge. I can't even imagine of constant change to make sure that, you know, we're balancing keeping kids in school and in buildings and yet everybody safe. As we move forward, I sincerely hope that whether an individual, whether they're a staff member or a student, whether they choose to wear a mask or not wear a mask, that everyone can be kind and respectful of that choice. You know, it's just really important that that individual is able to do that. So I look forward to that and to families and students and staff having an option finally. And I'm thrilled that we made that decision way back so that we're not having to worry about it anymore. So thank you so much for your work and everyone in the district for navigating this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to some action items, and it looks like Mr. Rose, you are up first with inter-district transfers.
Thank you, Chair Hecker. Good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Cordy. As we've discussed before, state law dictates the process for inter-district transfers, and at least once per year, the board needs to determine the number of openings for non-resident students to transfer into our district, as well as the number of students that we will allow to, resident students that we will allow to transfer out. And with the opening of the new high school, that has allowed us to provide capacity at each of our levels for additional students. And as we've previously also discussed, our enrollment projections for the next 3 years are below previous expectations. This evening, the district is requesting a continuation of the approach of allowing non-resident students to transfer into the district. And we're proposing that we allow 45 students at grades 9 through 12, 30 students in grades 6 through 8, broken up by 15 at 6th grade, 10 at 7th, and 5 at 8th grade, and an additional 30 students in grades kindergarten through 5th, 5 at each grade at Middleton Elementary School, as we did this current school year. Students would be allowed to remain through high school graduation, subject to meeting behavior and attendance requirements that are set forth in the inter-district transfer agreement. These slots will be allocated initially via lottery, opening tomorrow, and on a first come, first served basis thereafter. And then we'd also request that we grant release to 30 students for new inter-district transfer requests in the 22-23 school year for those that wish to attend a different school district. And those would be on a first come, first served basis and remain open until filled.
Any questions, comments? Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we, for the 2022-2023 school year, allow for the release of 30 students to be, allow them to go, that our Sherwood residents allow them to go to other districts, that we provide for incoming students in the number of 45 through grades 9 through 12, 15 at grade 6, 10 at grade 7, 5 at grade 8, and 5 at each grade at Middleton Elementary through K through 5 for a total of 30 students. For the incoming to be done by a lottery beginning tomorrow, and then first come, first served thereafter. For the release of 30 students, allow that on a first come, first served basis. Did I get that right, Mr. Rose?
You did. Thank you very much.
You did it the hard way, but well done. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
We'll move on, Mr. Emmert, to talk about the ever exciting policy updates for a second read for the school board.
Well, thank you, Board Chair Hecker. So in February, we brought updates to board policies in sections C, G, I, and J for first read and review. Tonight, we bring those updates back for second read and adoption, unless there are any questions.
Any questions, comments? You have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the OSBA policy updates as presented.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Emmert. Okay, so we are going to move on to the last action item of the evening. And what I would like to do is essentially read a script of what a public complaint is for some clarification. So a public complaints are part of a process that allows for transparency and accountability, not only for employees of public organizations, but also for elected officials supporting those organizations. A public complaint process is a way for the citizens to express a particular concern. Complaints against the board as a whole or against an individual board member should be referred to the board chair and may be referred to district council as described in our board policy KL-AR1. Upon receiving that complaint, district council was consulted in regarding appropriate next steps. In addition, council shared the opinion that a third-party investigation is never a bad idea. However, council acknowledged next steps are always a board decision. So it's my job as the board chair to present the complaint to the board. I've done that. It's been part of the board packet. If the board decides an investigation is warranted, the board may refer the investigation to a third party. When the investigation is complete, results would be presented to the board. And after receiving results of the investigation, the board would decide within 20 days in open session what action, if any, is warranted. As per policy KL-AR, I will share the public complaint with the board, followed by a period of discussion in which each board member may speak up to 2 times at 10 minutes each time, and then a vote would ensue. So the nature of the complaint states that individual board member complaint against Director Krista Thorne for potential violations of her oath of office and or her failing to meet her fiduciary responsibility to Sherwood School District as a board member. Director Thorne, and I'm quoting, violated her oath of office and failed to meet her fiduciary responsibility to the school district when she voted against the motion that the Sherwood School District follow the mask mandate as presented to the district by the Oregon Health Authority and the Oregon Department of Education, OAR 333-019-0115 on August 4th, 2021. As per KL-AR1, we are asking the board to refer the complaint for investigation by a third party. that concludes sharing of the complaint. And with that, we'll move on to potential discussion. Director Adamson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to start my comments by just kind of revisiting how we got to the motion on the 5th, or excuse me, on August 4th. There were some, there's been some question about whether that was proper or not proper, whether it was intended to try and catch any particular board member by surprise. And so I just want to kind of revisit how we got there. So as some may remember, the first meeting of this board was July 28th. At that point in time, it was still open for boards to make decisions about whether masks would be mandatory or not. This board took a lot of public comment that night. And then lo and behold, the next day, the governor announced that she would be requiring ODE, the Oregon Department of Education, the Oregon Health Authority, to institute a mask mandate and would take away local control. Nonetheless, I went back today and looked at my email inbox for my Sherwood School District account between the 29th and August 4th. And I found there was a lot of communication to this board about giving certainty to a particular decision. Please implement, please don't implement, please stand up to Salem. And there's a fair amount of intensity about what would or would not be what this district chose to do when the fall came. So on August 4th, we took some votes to be just very transparent with the community about what this district would and would not do. We took a vote on whether to implement the mask mandate. We took a vote on what to do when we reached this moment that we'll reach Saturday morning, about how we return post mandate. We took votes around social distancing, and we took a vote on whether or not our district would ever consider a district level vaccine mandate. And those votes varied in number and who voted for and against. And the one of the purposes of that was to enable our district to plan, our staff to plan, and for our families to know what the rules would be, so that there was no question of would masks be in place, would they not? Would we tell the governor what we thought about that or not? We would resolve the issue so we could plan, and so that families could make their own decisions about whether to have their kids here, elsewhere, etc. Whether to go virtual or not, knowing all the facts well in advance. And that has served us well. I want to be very clear about something so that can end any speculation in the community. I believe that it is my role as a board member to make motions, to participate with my fellow board members in a way that is above board and transparent. I do not believe that it's my job to try and catch somebody or to do a gotcha moment. That is not who I am as a human. That's not how we treat each other with respect. That is the role of this board, to model respectful behavior. So to be accused otherwise doesn't really sit well with me, to be real blunt. But I want to move on from that. We are an educational board. We spend our time volunteering to improve the educational environment of this community. And it may look from outside looking in like this is easy. It is not. We feel the weight of these decisions. We know people are going to agree and disagree. We all come to this board with our values and try and do our best to live them. And that means from time to time, I'm going to disagree with my fellow board members, but it is no secret where we all come from on particular issues. And so I think the goal here should be for how do we find a way to make sure that when we vote, that we're doing so in a way that's very clear,
so that our intentions are understood to the community. So we don't ever get to a place where there's a question of, was someone attempting to violate their oath? Was someone attempting to launch a protest? Was somebody, whatever that intention is clear on the record. And that is not something that comes easy or is real obvious. And I've spent 25 years working with elected bodies, and I can tell you, no one gets it right on the first time. And for some people, no one gets it right on the 275th time. So it's always an opportunity for education. And I think that's something we ought to embrace as a board. What I would prefer to do tonight, Madam Chair, instead of what I view as I think a very difficult thing, instead of moving down the road of trying to investigate, I would rather us take a moment to focus on educating. Because I think that there's always something that we can learn about how to make motions better, how to have a better opportunity to communicate our intentions. That August 4th meeting was not our best moment as a board, was not our best moment as a community. That meeting was chaotic. There was a lot going on. We had brand new board members. And what I would say is I think we could all do this better. And so I would really prefer to set this aside and spend time together as a board, being able to do some education, have OSBA come back in as soon as possible, be able to talk to us about the best way to do motions and that conversation so that we can be clear in our intentions and that we can reduce confusion for the public in what our intentions are. Because I think the most important thing is the trust between this board and the community. We have so many things that we need to do together that I want to find a way for us to improve that. So I don't know what the right process here is, Madam Chair, but I'd really like to make a motion to set aside this complaint, but to bring in OSBA and do some education, because I really believe that that is the healthiest thing for this board, for us to be able to learn how to communicate better with each other and with the community to reduce, to bridge that trust gap that seems to exist in some ways right now.
Any other questions, comments, anything to add to that?
Yeah, and I just wanted to level with everyone back during that meeting for that specific vote. And that speaks to kind of what Jessica was saying about it being one of our first meetings and being brand new. I actually flubbed that vote. Some people know that, some people I'm assuming do not. I didn't realize we were voting on what we were voting on, and it was a learning experience for me. Had I asked more questions and knew exactly what I was voting for, I would have voted no on masks for the kids. And so I feel like I want to get that out there. This complaint, as far as I'm concerned, is also directed at me. So I just feel like the process has been hijacked to attack a board member and intimidate a board member, which I just find very disappointing. And then the fact that a former board member put a stamp on it and then doubled down in the public comment is dismaying to me. I don't believe Jessica's intentions were to confuse or do a gotcha moment. I think, like she said, it was a very chaotic time. It was a very tense time in this room. If you were there, you know what I'm talking about. And I feel like we should take it a step further, not only maybe meet with OSBA and get some more clarification on how these things should go, but also maybe amend the policy or the procedure to exclude complaints about, a board member's voting behavior. I don't think Krista in any way intended to break any laws or do anything malicious. So amending the policy or the procedure, I think would be something we would probably we should consider.
Anybody else?
Yes, I would love to comment. I'm always happy to receive more training. This volunteer position is not like anything I've ever done before. So much of it is brand new. All of it, for the most part, is brand new. So I would never turn down more training, and I think that would make our board much stronger. But with that being said, I did not run for this position because I wanted to debate board members' actions and fight with the community constantly about members that are on our board and their behaviors. And I can't control anybody else on this board besides myself. But I ran for this position because I cared about education and our students in these schools. And so I really hope that we can come to a place where we agree that this is something that we're going to do, but then we really move forward in that direction. And our meetings are not so monopolized by these types of complaints and conversations, because I know my friends ask, is it what you thought? And I'm like, no. When I look at tonight and what we covered, a majority of what we're covering is not positively impacting our students. And that doesn't make me go home at night feeling great about what we're doing for our community. So I would love to do more training. I would love to not crucify Krista. I don't feel like what she did was malicious at all. But I would like for us to do this and then be able to move forward. So I hope that we can do that.
Director Adamson, do you have a motion?
Well, I will make one in just a second. I want to make a quick comment. I think, again, in the spirit of this community needs to come together around our kids. I don't want to, I don't think it's helpful. I don't think it's helpful to malign my fellow director on the board. I don't think it's helpful for us to try and ascribe motives to those bringing a complaint forward. I think that what we've got right now is a community that's pretty divided. And I would really love this board to be about healing and about how do we bring this community together. I just, that's where my heart's at right now. I would be happy to engage in a dialogue about amending the policy or the procedure. What I do want to be very mindful about is that there are some votes that may, we're just past a very large construction project, and we are, that all went very well with a ton of oversight. But one can imagine a day in which somebody with an actual conflict of interest is sitting on this board and votes inappropriately in directing a contract the wrong way. And that might be an instance where you would want a public complaint procedure that could hold somebody accountable. So I want to be real careful that we leave open the ability to hold truly bad behavior accountable. I also want to recognize that voting on motions is not as simple as it seems. And voting on policy motions and the intent and the context in which you're voting, and understanding and asking the right questions about what are the implications of this vote on the district and its fiduciary status, on its liability, on students. Is this a statement of values and beliefs, or is this going to operationally impact the district? What kind of vote are we taking? Asking those questions and being able to understand that takes time, and just a lot of experience to know and to ask those questions and be really sure before we take votes. So I think, again, the best path forward here is to do some education. So my vote, Madam Chair, or my motion rather, is I would move that we dismiss the public complaint and that we bring in OSBA as soon as they are available to do training with the board on a number of kind of policy issues to ensure that we have the tools available to us and the knowledge to make sure that we don't put the district or any member in conflict with their oath of office.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, so just to be clear, I'm assuming there's not going to be further discussion. So just to be clear, what we're voting on is that we're going to bring in OSBA as soon as possible to do our roles and responsibilities training for all of the boards so that we can review and move forward. So that's what the vote is. So all those in favor?
And
say-
Madam, sorry, and to dismiss the complaint as well.
Right, yeah, I mean, that's what we're doing instead. So yes. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. So we will have training and invite OSBA to our next board meeting if they're available. With that, there is no additional public comment.
Director
Sorry,
Heckler.
Director. There actually is one that's
Oh,
non-agenda.
Is there? Oh, I'm
related.
sorry.
So,
Sorry, there's one more public comment. I apologize.
if I may. Jesse Palmer, Gladstone, Oregon. Hello. Oh, whoops. Oh. Hello, Sherwood School District leaders. I teach science at the high school and have for 15 years. In that time, I've not had cause to bring issues to you or the superintendent until now. I'm disappointed to inform you that over the past 4 years, leaders at the high school and in facilities management have ignored my request to plant native trees and shrubs on the new high school campus. I provided them a list at the beginning of the planting process and continually checked in with my supervisor, letting them know botany could not be offered as SHS without natives being planted on campus. Since I teach environmental science and botany, I require a set of native plants for my students to study, much like a chemistry course needs beakers and chemicals. We look at their form, function, and place in the natural ecosystem. Once they are large enough, I would harvest cuttings from them for herbaria collections in botany. I am honestly in disbelief that planting natives has been denied. Since they are not invasive, they do not harbor pests, do not require pruning, and are naturally adapted to the sun and water conditions here already. This should be a win-win. Students can continue to take enriching hands-on course, and our district could be in support of ecologically sound landscaping practices. I have and will continue to be willing to secure funding, organize plantings, coordinate with landscapers, or anything else that is needed. Please, let's take a moment and consider what we have lost now that we aren't offering botany in the science curriculum. Appreciation for the plants that provide us food, oxygen, and beauty. Ecosystem services such as flood mitigation and wildlife habitat. An accessible course for skills center students, and a valuable science elective for students. Please help me to bring back botany to SHS students. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now with that, I believe we can officially adjourn. Our next board meeting will be on April 13th. Thank you.